Good morning, everyone. Wow, that was great. My name is Jenna Murphy, and it is my privilege to serve as a liturgist today and welcome you to Sayville Congregational United Church of Christ on this morning of September 17th. Thanks to all for joining us, whether in person or online. We are delighted to have you. Actually, we need you here to be who we are. So welcome again. We begin by wishing all of our Jewish neighbors and friends a happy Rosh Hashanah, Happy New Year, 5784, Lashana Tova, Tikativu. May you be inscribed for a good year. As a reminder, we welcome your feedback on this morning's worship, your comments that you might wish to share. There are several ways to contact us on the back of your bulletin, or you can speak directly to any of us. We really do appreciate your input in our shared worship and congregational life together. We also invite you to be part of the leadership on Sundays as liturgist, usher, and hospitality. You can ask me or Sue Lanchanton or almost anyone that is involved and sign up in the hallway outside the vestry or online. And as we said, you can reach us using any of the information on the back of the bulletin. Friends, we also ask you to remember Heather and Tim Corcoran and their family on the passing of Tim's dad, Jack Corcoran, over the weekend. Heather, as you know, is our church administrator. Visiting hours are at Rainer and DeAndrea on Tuesday from 3 to 5, 7 to 9, and the funeral mass will be at St. Lawrence on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Remembering the 16th Street bombing 60 years ago, an explosion shattered stained glass, crumbled bricks. Denise McNair, 11 years old, Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, they were 14. They all perished in the church bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church. Sarah, 10 years old, would survive. Victims of racism, of callousness to the human value of people with dark skin. Victims of a particular type of politics and politicians that pandered to the very worst of human nature for power and votes, as described by John Archibald in Friday's opinion piece on alabama.com. I ask that we each look into our hearts for the love we hold so generously to our families and one another, and pray that those who committed these and other crimes come to know what we do, come to know how wrong and hard and terrible it is to disavow the sanctity of any life and to embrace the worst of acts to satisfy the insatiable nature of hatred. Please join me in a moment of silence for these young people and all those who suffer at the hands of those who are so lost that they cause harm to others, especially the youngest of ours. Thank you. I know, Sue, you have an announcement?
First of all, thank you to everybody who volunteered this summer to take over liturgist and usher and also set up. And speaking of set up, thank you to Christine, who's kind of taken that job on permanently. But she can only set up if you provide the food. So please sign up for hospitality, either outside or let me know. I'd be happy to. And also thank you to Diane, who's really been a great greeter all summer long, but we're going to give her some time off too. So please sign up for being a greeter. You don't have to take attendance anymore. So that's the easy part. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, Michael, thank you. Thank you. But you have to start doing it as many times as Ray does.
Are there any other announcements? Be sure to join us for hospitality following worship and talk back here in the sanctuary at 11:30, which today has been prepared by the Chancel Choir. And now, yeah, I didn't think so.
That was my mistake.
I just read it. And now, please center and be still as the bell is rung and our worship continues. Please rise or remain seated and join us in our call to worship. How good it is to be together, to gather in prayer and praise and song. Our worship time brings us closer to you, rhythmic, moving, embracing God, from the beats of our hearts to the music that fills this holy space. Conducted from deep within the Spirit's sacred movement, we lift our voices in prayers and praise and song as you touch the silence within, from which outflowing flows. Come, friends, and let our hearts and souls sing and sing and sing. Please remain as you are and join us in the singing of our opening hymn, Welcome to This Place, number 40, in your Sing, Prayer, and Praise hymnal.
Welcome into this place. Welcome into this broken vessel. Your desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands and we lift our hearts as we offer up this praise unto your name.
Please remain standing or as you are and join us in this morning's unison prayer. May this prayer strum the rhythm of the universe from deeply within our connected being. May these words we speak join with the words to come even as we open ourselves to the spaces between each word, much like the pause, imperceptible as it is, between each breath. There, within that divine inspiration we share, is the sacredness and assurance of your presence. One word, one breath, one love to the next. Endless, wonderfully endless, tender, loving, and full with wonder. Please remain standing for the passing of the peace of Christ. May the peace of the risen Christ be with you.
And also with you.
Let us offer one another a sign. Friends, please be seated. Friends, we now invite you to share your joys, celebrations, and concerns. Please wait for the microphone and respond with "God, hear our prayers."
Jeannie Baum got in touch with me the other day, and I know she'll be preaching to us next Sunday, but asks for our prayers for her daughter-in-law, Maria, who is having some really serious health challenges.
God hear our prayer.
Well, I have a few things. I want to say that today was also a historic day. Today was also the Battle of Antietam, where one men died. Even 9/11 didn't surpass Antietam, the bloodiest day in the Civil War, where people fought to preserve this country. And also, this was the day of the first start of Arnhem, the last German victory, fortunately for the Allies, when the British and the Americans fought for the bridges in Netherlands. And I want to say something, that 6,000 people died in Libya from the floods. We have to pray for that. And then I have to pray one thing, a small 1-year-old boy being in a place where his parents thought was safe, parents' play, a child center, died from fentanyl. It ingested, so fentanyl even kills the youngest. So that's another scourge we have to think about, fentanyl, an evil that it's not caused by calamity, but the evil of human beings.
God hear our prayer.
Hear our prayers.
Prayers for the soul of our nephew, Rick Lusick, who passed away this week at age 56. God hear our prayers.
Prayers
Yes.
for my, go ahead, Roger. Go ahead. Prayers for my friend Jackie, whose husband died very suddenly on Wednesday.
God hear our prayers.
Yes, Randolph now has for the yoga class 3 guys for sure, and hopefully a few more out there. So we're looking forward to doing that.
I want to put in our prayers Bob Flood, who is over in the hospital with big clots this week. So
Oh dear.
God hear our prayers.
Prayers of joy and thanksgiving for my daughter Shannon's birthday.
God hear our prayer.
I'd like us to pray for my cousin Elizabeth Seligson, who passed. Pray for her family, please.
I want to thank our church family for being there for Christine and I in our time of loss.
God hear our prayers.
And a prayer for a joyful life. My aunt, almost 102, passed away last night.
God hear our prayer.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all those prayers. And also, if we could, to bring greetings to Robert Pierce at home, who is watching us hopefully this week with sound. Good morning, Robert. And to Nancy Sweezy, who is always watching us. To Nancy, we say hello. And to our friend, Martha Mola, who just loves the fact that last week, I announced that she was this member of our congregation from Utah. I think she's the only one from Utah who's a member. To those folks and all of those who are watching this morning, could you just say hi? Okay. And of course, I want to just remember Heather Corcoran and Tim this morning as they make arrangements for their funeral and the wake for Jack Corcoran, Tim's dad, who's been declining for quite some time. So our prayers with them, and our prayers, of course, continue with Debbie and her family on the loss of Fred during this time of recovery. And we're around you. You know that. We love you. Thank you for being here this morning. And just a joy. I want to thank Bobby and Evelyn, our two newest members of the choir. Is that correct? And to Vicki, who is back with us from travels and other places. The choir sounds fabulous, and to Sean for your leadership. So it can be done, all of you with a voice. You can join as well, but thank you all. And so with these prayers that we've spoken and in our hearts, let's join together in the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples to pray.
Please remain seated and join us in the prayer of Jesus as you learn to pray. Creator God, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the glory, and the glory. Amen. Please remain seated and join us in singing Shadow and Substance, hymn number 398 in the New Century Hymnal, verses 1, 3, and repeat number 1.
Shadow and substance, wonder and mystery, spellbinding spinner of atoms and earth, soul of the cosmos, person and energy, source of our being, we sing of your worth. Naming the nameless, spirit of unity, scanning the heavens for signs of your care. God of the ages, give us humility, guide us to mystical union in prayer. Shadow and substance, wonder and mystery, spellbinding spinner of atoms and earth, soul of the cosmos, person and energy, source of our being, we sing of your worth.
This morning's gospel reading is from the book of Matthew, chapter 18, verses 18 to 25. Please listen for the message of these words in your heart. Peter came up and asked Jesus, "When a sibling wrongs me, how many times must I forgive? 7 times?" "No," Jesus replied, "not 7 times. I tell you 70 times 7. And here's why. The kingdom of heaven is like a ruler who decided to settle accounts with royal officials. When the audit was begun, one was brought in who owed tens of millions of dollars. As the debtor had no way of paying, the ruler ordered this official to be sold along with family and property in payment of this debt. At this, the official bowed down in homage and said, "I beg you, Your Highness, be patient with me. I will pay you back in full." Moved with pity, the ruler let the official go and wrote off the debt. Then that same official went out and met a colleague who owed the official $20. The official seized and throttled this debtor with the demand, "Pay back what you owe me." The debtor dropped to the ground and began to plead, "Just give me time and I will pay you back in full." But the official would hear none of it and instead had the colleague put in debtor's prison until the money was paid.
When the other officials saw what had happened, they were deeply grieved and went to the ruler, reporting the entire incident. The ruler sent for the official and said, "You worthless wretch, I canceled your entire debt when you pleaded with me. Should you not have dealt mercifully with your colleague as I dealt with you?" Then in anger, the ruler handed the official over to be restrained until the debt had been paid in full. My Abba in heaven will treat you exactly the same way, unless you truly forgive one another from your hearts. So said Jesus. Last week, we talked about my friend Joe Gilmore's comment once upon a time where he said, "I believe in Jesus, I just don't know. I believe Jesus, I just don't know if I believe in Jesus." I believe in Jesus, I just don't know if I believe Jesus, I just don't know if I believe in Jesus. It's almost hard to say. My point that day was sort of like another expression. You need to be in it to win it. In other words, to believe in Jesus, do we need to be in Jesus? We talked about that. Sort of like believing you can swim, but you need to get into water to swim. You can believe you're a swimmer, but you need to get into the water to practice swimming. I gave an example of how we as a congregation not only believe that those with less should be cared for, those experiencing food insecurity should get food. We not only believe that, but our actions show that we believe in that. We believe in it enough to share our building, our space, with those who provide for those who have less food or who have truly more of a need for the companionship that comes with the table. Now, at Talkback, others were quick to point out to me that actually one of the comments was, when you said you didn't understand what Joe was saying about I believe Jesus, but I don't believe in Jesus, I thought, what? You don't understand that? It means he doesn't know if Jesus was divine or not. But then as we spoke, we actually never even touched the divinity question. We just stayed in that place where if you believe, do you practice it? As far as believing Jesus being divine, do you? Whatever your answer is to that question, there is no question what the power of Jesus is. There's no question about the intense and provocative nature of his teachings. There's no question about just what can be accomplished in his name, following his way. Believing in Jesus, living into his teachings, at best imperfectly as we can, brings us to the next brink of who Jesus is, who God is, who the Spirit is, without limits of dogmas or creeds, yet built upon them like scaffolds that one day are no longer needed. Sometimes we really hold on to the scaffolds long after they are needed. So before we leap to a personal resolution of Jesus' divinity in each of our lives, it seems we need to practice that what his teachings offer us is right for us. To enter into an actual practice as we are able, living into those teachings, or as our friend Mary Oliver says, pay attention, be amazed, talk about it. And this scaffolding, from all that I can tell, is the practice of a lifetime, at least for me. It has been. And it's a daily affair, one day at a time. Prayer, meditation, practice, letting go of expectations for an outcome. There's a big one. Letting go of expectations, projecting an outcome so much that when it doesn't happen, we are devastated or resentful or angry or whatever. I once asked a professor as I was coming out of seminary, I said, now we have this degree. Where do I go? There's so much need. He says, start where your feet are. The Spirit will take care of the rest. And know that that Spirit is not just a scholarly response to a newbie in seminary, but it's true. As is it true that we, all of us are loved. All of us. and that I have a part in that love of all, in knowing that I am loved by my God as I understand my God, believing in that, and believing I love God. Even if I get tangled up when I turn that question around and ask myself, I believe God loves me and I love God, but am I in love with God? If love becomes a third entity, so to speak, in that, instead of thinking about, am I in love with God? It might just mean, am I in love, in a servicing with God of others? And again, the answers to such questions for me come from the way I engage in the teachings that I believe. And today's gospel, wow, once again, here we are. It comes down to one of the most difficult things for humans to practice in society and in our own personal lives, the F word, forgiveness. Now, parables, of course, are told in the language and the culture of the day. The example of the official forgiving a debt would have been understood. The ability of the forgiven to deceive for their own self-interest with no intention of passing that forgiveness or mercy on to others would also have been easily understood. And then the witness of the bystanders who had seen the forgiveness and then who saw the forgived one quickly forget how they had been treated, would have fomented their desire as they insisted that one before them pay or be jailed. And their desire would have wanted for that one to receive justice that punished the hypocrisy. How dare you? The one who had been forgiven and refused to forgive. And in the end, then, Jesus' conclusion is, judgment is in Abba's hands, reminding us that that's not our business. It also reveals another question. It's about the relationship of making something different in the way that that ruler responded. That was certainly a different response. And then receiving that response for it to change us. Something different doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to change. In an instant, the official made a difference in that person's life with the forgiveness of their debt, but it didn't change them. It's not automatic. The act of forgiveness didn't transfer, so to speak. The refusal to forgive as you have been forgiven resulted in a breach of the teaching. And there was no change in the person without passing along what they had been given. And the breach became greater. So often when we hear in the Gospels, repent, repent, the word means return. Return to God. Close the breach. Again, this is a parable, a teaching story, easily understood by those who would hear it, even believe. The rub that Jesus was up against was getting them to what? Practice. Thank you, Randolph. Practice. To believe in it. Because Jesus knew his teachings. Jesus knew their lives. Jesus knew the lives of those to come depended upon their practice of what those bereft of zeal of an evangelist would also be able to come to know. Not all of us are born with the gift of zeal. It takes practice. And then this is real. It sometimes hurts the brain, even today, to think of forgiveness. You know, I was taught that some people were really simply evil, evil. And I don't really remember being taught anything about forgiveness for those evil people other than to pray for their souls that were going to burn in hell. There was a relative I had in the family that when somebody did something, betrayal was top on the list. The word wasn't betrayal, but the word wasn't forgiveness. It was mort. They're dead. And they were to them. And yet, I'm sure I was taught otherwise. And today I try to practice it otherwise. It just seems that some things need to be practiced not just 7 times, but 70 times 7 times. In other words, a lot. Because it is not the easiest reflex to teach, to forgive. Too often it is a lot easier to reach for fear of being hurt again and putting up that wall. And this is what I always say when it comes to the topic of forgiveness. It does not make what the person or people may have done right. It does not mean that we forget about it. It does not remove accountability or the need to help those harmed. It is not a difference in how we think, but a change in our actions that helps to release the forgiveness that is in us, even as those forgiven meet the responsibility for their actions. The release of forgiveness releases us from the hold of resentment, jealousy, anger, and much more. And it frees the other from inside of us. As we get past long-held offenses, we come to realize that as we believe what Jesus taught and we practice it, there is more revealed. Now, it seems to me, and I am sure it probably does to you, that we talk about these same things over and over and over and over. Even when we do things differently, the message is the same. Our growth in the message comes from the practice and the insight and even the comfort of our repetitions. But those repetitions do not become the goal or the objective. It is through that 70 times 7 that we continue to grow in ways that bring us into the belief and practice of what we hold dear. And that's the living part. At the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, members of the white supremacist KKK exploded 19 sticks of dynamite onto the stairs of the front of the church. It was attached to a timing device so that when they could inflict the most harm, they could ignite the explosion, which killed 4 girls, as Jenna told us, and it injured many others. Did someone forget to teach them something again and again and again and again? Martin Luther King Jr. called it one of the most vicious and tragic crimes ever perpetrated against humanity. Can you hear the pain in that? It was a different time. It would be 14 years before one of the Klansmen would be convicted in 1977. Final convictions of the other surviving perpetrators, one died in 94, would be done by 2002, almost 40 years later. And you know what's funny? Well, in a coincidental sort of way, on that Sunday 60 years ago, the lectionary would have been the same as it is today. The gospel on that day would have been the one we read today. At the burial, Martin MLK said this. He said, "This tragic day may cause the white side to come to terms with its conscience. In spite of the darkness of this hour, we must not become bitter. We must not lose faith in our white brothers. Life is hard, at times as hard as crucible steel, but today you do not walk alone." That's believing in Jesus. To stand there and to say that, and to say it again and again. Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, standing in the pulpit of that church just this last Friday, said, "If we are going to continue to move forward as a nation, we cannot allow concerns about discomfort to displace knowledge, truth, or history. It is certainly the case that parts of this country's story can be hard to think about." But she stressed the importance of a full and unflinching telling of the story. The telling of the story has been how the message has been carried since the beginning. And part of that story is that we have to own even the darkest parts of our past, understand them, vow to never repeat them, call them out when we see them again today, step up to people who are going down that path, and still within our heart have a place for them that understands their humanity. That's hard. Forgetting is not forgiveness. And forgiveness is not forgetting. I visited the website of the 16th Street Baptist Church as I pulled these comments together, and the big splash across the page says, 16th Street Baptist Church, and underneath it says, "Where Jesus is the main attraction." It occurs to me that after so much struggle and the weight of its history, to publicly make that clear suggests they believe Jesus too. Do they believe in him? They have to say that, as we do. But I'm less worried about that. I'm more concerned about the practice of believing. Not even worried. I'm enthused by it. 70 times 7. Wow. Means it will take a while for some of us, but we have to practice what we can. And when we aren't able to move as quickly as we like, not to give up or to challenge ourselves as being incompetent or somehow less than. And for all the ways we may say things, all the different ways we may say things, the change is what's in our heart. So saying yes to what we can, letting the rest come to us in that spirit of God's presence and love, remembering that we are part of God's presence and love and the practice of that in this world, regardless of who may or may not be practicing it themselves, assures us of not falling into this trap. The quote that is attributed to several sources. It says, "There is a principle which is a bar against all information," and I would say belief as well, "which is a proof against all arguments, which cuts off any need for forgiveness, and which cannot keep a person in everlasting ignorance, cannot fail to keep a person in everlasting ignorance. And that principle is contempt prior to investigation." Believing takes away the contempt. Investigation calls us to the joy of the practice of what we believe. 70 times 7 or whatever it may take, it is that which changes things, however differently we may say it, at the core of who we are and who we hope to be. And as I have said before, if you want to know how we do it, please rise, if you are able, and join us in singing the covenant of this church, which expresses the way that we do it quite well.
In response to God's love, we covenant with each other to be faithful to the demands and inspiration of the eternal Spirit revealed in the event of Jesus Christ, to accept and respect each other with love and concern in our worship and witness, to reach out with the courage of our convictions in the cause of justice, liberation, and equality for all. In this we covenant to keep the ultimate promise. I care, I am with you.
Please be seated. I think when we hold back what it is we've been given to others who need what we have, our practice starts to fail. We start to decline. Our heart starts to atrophy. We get distracted by things that have nothing to do with anything of any importance, other than to be a distraction from what is important. And so pass on what you can. Pass on without the judgment. Pass on in the way that the official who was forgiven forgot, so that there is no breach, so that the practice and the teachings may continue, and all will always know what we have to offer in the love of God and the grace of God's presence and Spirit in our lives. Because you and me, we're the ones, you know. Go in peace.
We sail above the weather, we search the ocean floor, we rival our creation, still yearning for more. But can we fly together, a migratory bee? How wonderful if that's what God could see. A single voice in whispered prayer can only pray to travel there. But all as one we sound the everlasting sound and sing our salvation. Aloft and in formation, migratory bee. How wonderful if that